Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Totally Indian Football Show. And as always, I always get make sure to get interesting people on my podcast, and more than so that they bring in more interesting stories, and you don't get bored for each and every episode. This is the Totally Indian Football Show. I'm your host Siju, and today I have with me Mr. Nilanjan Datta, who has worked with the AIFF. He was a former director of media for AIFF, so he's closely worked with the national teams at different levels and also knows probably inside out. He also has decades of experience working as a journalist. Nilanjan, welcome to the show and thank you so much for making time.
Thank you so much, Siju, for having me. Absolute pleasure, given the fact that I keep on following your episodes and the individuals who have come here of much repute. So, looking forward to it. Absolute pleasure.
Great, then let's kick start with this. Nilanjan, if I had to ask you first things first, what are you up to these days?
Eating, sleeping, and getting fat. Nothing else. Spending some time with the family, kind of taking a break, and obviously following sports, not just football or Indian football, each and everything. There are certain plans. I'll be letting you know.
Sure, sure. I think it would give probably listeners to also understand how, probably the wealth of experience and knowledge you bring to this industry. And most of us know you as director of media or head of media for AIFF, but there's whole the other side where you started off as a journalist and a well-known one, I must say. So if you can just take us through your journey, you know, which also of course included working with AIFF, but if you can just let us know if I may, take you back down the memory lane.
Well, always love to be getting down memory lane. It's not just professional journey. It's a kind of been a very personal touch and a personal journey for me. Started way back when I was a kid. Was lucky enough to be kind of groomed into sports, being brought up in a joint family by my parents, not just the dad, but also the mom, the paternal uncles, aunties, each and every one. Late 70s, I mean, so that obviously shows my age. I first fell in love with sports. And believe it or not, the Bonno Porichoy, the first book in Bengal, which everyone reads, every kids obviously read, Bonno Porichoy. I didn't read much of that because my baptism came through Khelar Ashor, Khelar Kotha. Those are weekly sports magazines back in Kolkata. So my dad used to give them to me. I started off, became an avid sports fan, not just an Indian football fan. Obviously, being in Kolkata, there were regular visits to the big three, Mohan Bagan, East Bengal, not to forget Mohammedan Sporting. Have seen, been a fan, followed Indian football and Indian sports like anything. Wanted to be a journalist because I always felt attracted to the sports person. And not just Indian, not just the football stars of Bagan, East Bengal, or Mohammedan Sporting, but also Ranji Trophy stars of Bengal at that time, all other sports person. So I felt only a journalist can be close to a star, can talk to them, star in the sense a player, can talk to them, can soak in all the experiences. So that was my ambition right from my childhood. I was born into a family of professors, so everyone kind of took it for granted that this guy is the next one out there. It didn't happen, and I pursued my kind of ambition and eventually started journalism career in 1999 in Times of India in Delhi in the sports department. Hindustan Times shifted on to HT, then to TV Today, reporting for Aaj Tak and Headlines Today, also television production. Was part of the launch of the NewsX, brilliant channel at that time. And then later on, with all the experience of the fan and being on the other side, moved to the other side, which was the All India Football Federation, and this resigned almost a journey of 12 years. So resigned in September as director communications and the chief spokesperson. So that's been a journey so far as sports is concerned.
Well, definitely a great, interesting one journey that. Now, when you moved to AIFF, right, to work closely with this organization, with the federation, what were the things that you had to probably be adapted to? Because as you mentioned, you were once a fan and then you were a journalist from the other side. Now you're getting on to the other side, probably, where things where you have to work and, work in tandem, they have certain values and follow those set of rules. So what was the changes that you had to adapt to from it being from a journalist of full fledged, where you have the freedom to ask and do and share what you have to, but here now within the freedom there's still a limitation that you have. So what was, if you can share that?
Well, the first thing was a kind of an eye opener, if I may admit, because being a journalist, I have no problems admitting it. Each and every time a journalist is known for the good stories, which are kind of critical stories. So each and every time when I was a journalist, hitting a stone or throwing a stone at any sporting federation or a player or a sporting body was very, very easy. It still is very easy. But when you came and I actually joined the other side, the realization crept in that, okay, there are so many things that need to be done, so many roadblocks in the way, and it's not just always a sporting body or here the federation who's kind of solely responsible for everything. The entire spectrum and the paradigm of Indian football, it's not just the football house or the All India Football Federation or the employees who work there. So that was the first realization that crept in, and it was a huge family, starting from the district associations to the state associations to the zones, and then coming on to the football federation and the national teams. Very often, as journalists or as fans, what people tend to ignore is the fact that the decentralization are going back to the grassroots. Now, going back to the grassroots, it's not just all about youth development, it's about each and everything. That's the thing which I had ignored. I put up my hand and say, as a journalist, kind of realization and eye opener came in fully when I joined the federation. And lot many of my journalist friends pull my leg and say, "Ah, tu to udhar chala gaya." That's the reason you say this. But I think that's the education level which each and every journalist needs to have.
Now, it's interesting that you mentioned that when you say development is not just about grassroots or about players. So, if you can probably tell us what is that you learned from being on the other side that development means at every level. So, if you can just shed more light on that.
So, to give you an example, whenever a team plays or a team performs, we kind of tend to means the brickbats are solely on the federation if the results are not our way, and very often most of the times the results do not come our way. But have we taken a serious step back, thinking what needs to be done at the grassroots level in parts, in terms of not just youth development but administration as well? If you take into consideration my journey, when I first, my dad hold my hand and took me to the first Nehru Cup, my first ever international match at the Eden Gardens, India playing Yugoslavia. We won that match 2-1. I remember Monoranjan Bhattacharya and Manoj Bhattacharya scoring for India, a great Yugoslavian team. And then the visits to the big three. Nowadays, if I drive my dad and hold his hand and take him to those big three, the club tents in Kolkata and the Kolkata Maidan, nothing much has changed as far as the infra is concerned, as far as the mentality of the people are concerned. I'm not doubting the passion. The district association where I first took up a cricket bat, where I first hit a ball, the Chinsura Mahugli District Sports Association, or the all other sports associations out there, what has changed? The faces have changed, the passion has stayed the same. But as we are kind of enveloping ourselves in the modern age, are we moving ahead with the times? Because when you speak of any sport, and the biggest example we give is of cricket, look at the amount of the dedication and the structure which a cricketing sports body at the lowest level has in comparison to not just football but to all other sports in India, and therein lies the difference. Maybe obviously it's also the commercial angle coming in when 1983 happening, the entire scenario of sports in India has changed. But that's where I understood that it's the district associations, the state associations involving the state governments. It's happening in Indian football, but at a very, very slow pace.
Now, for someone who's worked in that so closely with the federation and out there and the inside out of things, so what do you think probably is the hindrance to the block point for the changes that you want to see but you can't see, like the ones that you mentioned? Who do you see then coming in, stepping in, and saying, "Hey, this needs to be done, so let's just work and get it done"?
Well, unless the individuals or the human resources at the district associations and the states come up to do it, it won't happen for Indian football ever. Because, whatever happens, we say a Dr. Shaji Prabhakaran or a Mr. Kalyan Chaube or their predecessors, Mr. Praful Patel or Mr. Kushal Das, or their predecessors, Mr. Alberto Colasso and the late Mr. Priyaranjan Das Munshi. We kind of try to blame them each and every time. Now, being at the helm of affairs, there's a certain amount of responsibility which each and everyone needs to take, understandable. But if the players are not coming up. Now, if you go to the youth teams of the country, how is the youth team getting selected? It's being done by the federation at their own initiative. I'm not saying cost, at their own initiative, because there's not much on the pipeline which are coming out and a wholehearted effort from each and every one. So the districts and the states are not the kind of sole providers. Unless India fields an under 16 team in the AFC qualifiers, both boys and girls, there can be sanctions, football goes back. But is it the sole responsibility of the federation? Is it? It isn't. People say, okay, now the federation goes out with its limited capabilities, limited resources, going out and fielding a team. We are still good enough at the 16 under 16 level for the boys. The girls we haven't been able to, and it comes from only the efforts of the All India Football Federation. Now if that entire country's strength, which is so huge, if all of that is put together, each and every association putting their hands together, I'm not saying that associations don't, most of the associations nowadays are doing it. Imagine the strength which we can have. So that's the time where which we need to pull our socks up. And if you say sometime or the other, have been kind of disappointed by most of my contemporaries or friends who have been in coaching, because eventually whatever you do, it eventually boils down to the performance on the field, and have been hugely disappointed despite the coach education program being there, of the coaches not themselves taking up the efforts to upgrade themselves. These are the two things which I believe needs to be done, and it's a whole team effort coming in. It cannot be done by only the people sitting in at the football house, or not just the state association. It needs to percolate back and decentralize as much as possible.
Right. Now you mentioned the coach education aspect, but before that you also mentioned like how you see sport is evolving and there are, as are we also evolving at that level. Now, before I get to that, again to probably ask you a point where if you think, yes, I do agree for the fact that there's AIFF and then there are state associations and everyone has a chance and equal responsibility to play. But then if it's not AIFF, for example, then who is it who needs to get out on the field and say get this work done? You did answer by saying that there has to be individuals who have that drive to get things done, but if it's not happening, then I think that's why it falls back on AIFF shoulders, or people point back at AIFF saying there's not enough being done. So who should be probably a mediator in between, or there should be something that where AIF someone from AIFF has an eye on all the associations if they're doing their work well.
Well, there are departments, there are state development departments out there, the general secretary, the general secretariat office, and all other individuals concerned with the work obviously put in their brains and do coordinate with each and everything. But you cannot kind of force this that happening each and every time. Now, people may say, as you say very rightly, okay, someone has to, the federation is driving it. The federation with a name has been driving it and had been driving it. But at the end of the day, despite all those drives, we haven't moved drastically, or maybe very minuscule percentage we have actually moved up in terms of technical expertise on the field. So somewhere down the line, something's lacking. Each and every program, pilot projects, Vision Asia, there have been various projects and programs which have been there, but at the end of the day, unless a wholehearted effort comes in from the state associations, obviously there's coordination being done, and very often lack of finances is cited by most state associations and district associations. But in this way, in this world, one needs to understand that the federation is not the BCCI at all with a plethora of resources. It's on a shoestring budget. It was on a shoestring budget. It still is on a shoestring budget. So there's only a certain amount of limit part which can be done. The self sufficiency part, or the financial sustainability part on behalf of the state associations, need to be driven by them. There are certain state associations who are doing a very good job, but the others need to again pull up their socks and come up there.
Okay, fair enough. Now let's move on to the another point that you mentioned of at different levels that you need development, and one is the coach education aspect of it and how the coach is really evolving like the sport is. Because come when we speak about the players' development, it boils down to do we have good coaches? So coming to that point, I wanted to ask you, you've been there working, and you mentioned the coach education program that's going on. Do you think that coach education program that we had as of now is that efficient, and is that program or curriculum evolving like the sport is?
Well, I need to be very categorically mentioning that this is a kind of a generalized statement from my side. It's not specific and it's not all, but some or kind of most of the coaches which I'm speaking about. You speak, Siju, about the curriculum very rightly, but you know what? A curriculum also stays in a school. But the toppers and the best students that come out, if they just follow the curriculum, they won't survive. They won't be reaching the echelons where they want to. It's as simple as that. There needs to be the extra push from their parents because there are kids. In this case, the push needs to be coming in from the coaches themselves. The upgradation kind of gelling with the modern times, keeping themselves ahead of what's happening. When you speak to a coach, most of the coaches who have been very good friends, who are good friends, and who will be good friends say, are you a coach? Well, I am not. But most of the times, or some of the times, which I have seen that they lack the technical knowledge, they lack the eye to be, what do you say, to be spotting a scouting a player. Now, with the amount of coaches that we have all over the country, obviously it may not be in numbers huge as far as the vastness of the country is concerned. Where are the players being scouted? We say we need to have a scouting network. Fair enough. We need to have. But aren't those coaches who are all over the country? They are scouts themselves. That's part A. Part two is whenever you speak about your coaching, you need to have the intellect and the personality, and you need to be talking and expressing yourself. That's a thing which most coaches in India lack. Unless you have the personality, you cannot be commanding the respect. Because in this generation, I have seen this people say, when a pep talk happens, for example, most of the pep talks which I have seen of teams are, आज कोई बाहर से आए हैं, आपकी धरती माँ के ऊपर आपका आक्रमण किया, आप क्या करोगे? And then there are some pep talks that go on. The same pep talk goes on for 12 matches, 13 matches, 14 matches. And there have been under 14, under 16 boys who have told me, sir, वही तो आज धरती माँ के ऊपर कोई आया है, वही सुनना है. And I used to tell them, hey, come on, pay attention to the coach. So the kind of personality that a coach needs to be having, the discipline which most coaches need to have, is somewhere down the line lacking. This may ruffle huge many feathers. I have seen coaches asking me in a license program, calling me up and personally asking me, boss, national team कौन सी formation में खेलते हैं? I'm not lying. I'm not lying at all. I was stunned. I was just stunned. Alam, come on, you don't even know what the national team formation is. No, no. Do they play 4-4-2 or are they playing 4-3-3? What formation? Alam, you are a coach, you are in an A license, and this is a kind of a generic statement. This is a kind of a generic statement. And I sometimes wish back that I was a coach myself. I had taken this up seriously because unless coaches kind of upgrade themselves and take us and find those players, we won't be going anywhere. Having said this, it's not that I have anything against the coaches, and I'm not generalizing that all coaches are bad. Absolutely not. But given the vastness of a country, most coaches need to be at that top level in India. But sadly, in India, given the vastness of the country, the IQ level and the personality, the culture, the upgradation level, people just do not care. Maybe people care for their own academies which they have. This is my perception. I may be totally right, I may be absolutely wrong. This is entirely my opinion, and I'm not saying or general, I mean, kind of pointing a finger at anyone. The quality of coaches in India is lacking. Very often, many coaches in India do complain. Even they have complained to me. No ISL club employs us. I've told them, sir, why is that reason that no ISL clubs are recruiting you guys despite you having a pro license? Means, don't you echo the same kind of confidence which is required for them? Why are clubs in India at each and every level going out to employ foreign coaches who may be substandard? because there's a reasoning for this, that maybe they don't have the confidence in the Indian coaches, so that confidence of the Indian coaches needs to be shown by the coaches that they are confident enough. Lot many stories Siju, out there. It's been very, very extremely disappointing, because I means anyway, long story, not to be opening more of the Pandora's box.
Sure. I mean, like having worked closely here, and also, I mean, I've not been part of courses as participant, but as coordinators. I am not surprised at any of the things that you mentioned, but probably of maybe the listeners are. But coming back to the point where you mentioned that yes, personality and character building, all of this also has also the onus is on the individual. Here, the individual could be a coach, or even if it's a player, to build the responsibility of building your character and your discipline and everything, because that's what I think attracts the most, even when you see coaches from the foreign or the clubs that we follow overseas. But coming back, like for example, if I had to say, when a kid goes to school, right, from different backgrounds, things in their house is different, things that in the locality of the kid is different, so the kid is exposed not much to whatever is limited. And when he or she goes to school, then there's things thrown at them, and they there are teachers and there are people in the school that help the kid either to grow and develop into it, or then if again, the kid also has certain responsibilities. But if I had to draw the same example to a coach, yes, he or she is an adult, has seen much more than a kid going to school. But here, he or she is again going down to, say, pursue coaching, and coach education course is just like another course, like a school or education field. Don't you think, are we, that's why I asked you, I'm repeating my question again, is something that is our curriculum or our course that you say, does that have enough emphasis on building personality, building a character, where it pushes the coach to say, hey, you need to work on these and these aspects? Probably also the whole building of self confidence that you mentioned. The technical side may or may not be right, it could be wrong, but most of the times I see coaches get the technical aspect but kind of miss out on building the character and the personality. So where do you see we have enough instructors? One is that, and you mentioned how everything boils down to the results on the field. Right now, we've also seen coaches who've gone short way above their head, saying when they win a tournament, they're like, okay, now it's the time for Indian coaches to be at the helm. But do we see the instructors who are taking up these courses, have they tasted success in their respective coaching period? Because that's how it probably should boil down, right? So again, we can go back and forth about this, but as someone who worked closely in all of these departments, what do you have to say about that?
Well, instructors, they may means tasting success in their life, as you say. It can happen in various dimensions. Very honestly, it does not need to be necessarily need to be a good player to be a good instructor, be a good coach. There are exceptions, but obviously it's a norm generally that okay, you need to be being a player helps. But obviously there are always many exceptions. The courses that I have been part of, A license, even nowadays B, and even the pro licenses, a couple of times maybe C licenses, even up the ladder, the curriculum changes. Much is emphasis being is being put on the psychology of the coaches, development of personality. For example, given from my side, when the coach education curriculum was kind of totally revamped. I remember having a chat with the then TD, Mr. Robert Ban, wherein I said, Ki, we need to have this media curriculum in each of these coaching courses, public speaking, handling the social media, handling the press. And therein it was kind of inculcated in the A, and there in the B, and even the C, and definitely the pro licenses. Now, all these lectures go on and these courses go on for a max duration of a month, 2 modules, sometimes 3 modules, or maybe 15 days. Gaining as much education as you can, drinking as much water as you can, means soak in, you need to go back, keep it in your mind, and again upgrade yourselves. Because the things that have been taught, what the dilemma of coaches is, I found out many coaches have told this to me. They say that what we are being taught in the coach education program, we understand is modern football. But the moment we go back to the hinterland or the areas where we come from, the former coaches whom we see or whom we have seen growing up, They do not follow the modern curriculum. Obviously, football is the sense, Rahim Saab's famous quote, ball low, ball low. But the modern trends are not there. Now, that's a debate whether the modern trend or the old trend or football trend. That's a different debate altogether. So, whatever is being taught is kind of contradictory to what he has been taught all this 30 years, 25 years, 17 years. I mean, so what do you say? Not 17, 25, 30 years or 40 years, maybe. So, all of a sudden, that personality changing within the coach also cannot be prompted all of a sudden. There will be a time requirement from their side. Whatever the habits are, whether they are good habits or bad habits, it stays. You cannot teach me all of a sudden something new. I may be kind of believing, but at the same time, I've seen people achieving success at the domestic level using old techniques. So a conglomeration or a mixture of all things needs to be done, and it's again up to the coaches to be finding, to be drinking, sipping as much milk from the water and the milk mixed together, and only then can we perform. I believe, Siju, you were there in one of the lectures. I won't name the city, wherein it was asked, how many of you do a video session? It was a pro license coaching course. Do a video session prior to a match. There was one hand, I believe, two hands which went up. Coaches who actually did video sessions prior to a match, studying the opposition, dissecting the opposition, building on the strengths of the opposition. In a pro license coach in India, till some years back, pro license, no one did. So that speaks about the upbringing of the coaches, which I was reiterating. And if you, all of us, I'm not doubting that they are bad. Please, if they understand that I'm doubting they are bad, sorry, I have never been saying that. But the upbringing all of a sudden cannot change overnight. And that's where the disappointment has been. Now, if I look back at those individuals and personalities and say, coaching could have been taken a bit more seriously, they have been. But at the end of the day, again, the upbringing also comes into play.
Right. Now, coming to the fact that before we move on and coming to the point, do you think there are enough jobs for coaches to go out there and implement themselves and probably do those mistakes and rectify and upbring themselves at a level where we see they're improving? Now, the reason I'm asking you, yes, we have academies, yes, we have clubs, but when we talk about players, we talk about term and it's been thrown into Indian football, game time. Is there enough game time? I think it's the same question that we should probably ask. If coaches also need to develop themselves, they also need to have game time, right? Be at the helm of things, and whether it's the youth level, grassroots level, or at the senior team level, do you see somewhere down now, it's not a perspective from the federation or anything, but where does that onus come from, and how can we improve on that? Even like the top level league, I think it's now extended to a month more, but it's still not going around the entire year, where probably everyone gets a chance, and then eventually, even the referees get time to develop themselves. But how do you see at the, from bottom to top, do these coaches literally have, enough space and time for them to go out there and have that space to learn?
I would say yes, people may disagree with me because everyone eyes the national team's coaching spot. Fair enough. That's the ambition. That's the tip of the pyramid. That's the pinnacle of your career. You are coaching your country. You are coaching India. Why not? But not everyone can be there. Only the best would be there. If you look back at the vastness of the country and you take away the urban areas, there's a huge segment of people who are still following, kids who are still following football in those pockets where football is popular, and even in those pockets where football isn't that popular. So if you look into an academy from the country where from the region I come from, my parents are based, my home is in Kalyani. Some 200 meters from my home, there's a ground where there are 300 kids coach means playing each and every day. I'm telling this, I last visited them in the month of March, I guess. 300, it has kind of swollen into maybe, or maybe, okay, let's take it for granted, 300. Out of those 300, take it for certain, not 300, not a single one wants to be a footballer. But the hand eye coordination, hitting the field, the street smartness, physical fitness obviously can be put and inculcated. Coaches complain of game time. I understand what you say. It also needs to be done by the districts, the states, and the federation side. Of those 300, you break into segments, give them game time. What stops you? I came from the Chinsura Hooghly District Sports Association, where on 150 kids we used to play and we used to get games. The late Bholada, who was coaching me, I mean, whom I was the fortune of being coached by, he also coached the late Mr. Surajit Sen Gupta, Mr. Sarup Das, Mr. Tanumay Basu, Prasun Banerjee, Bidesh Bosh, Biplab Sham Chaudhary, all India players. We saw them in front of our eyes. We played games amongst themselves. In these academies where the players, kids are there, how many coaches take up the initiatives of playing games each and every day? Mingling them. Okay, 14-year-old, okay, the 13 and the 14-year-olds play, mix and match. We have played. When we were class 7, we used to play against our seniors. It was a kind of a dangerous thing, but football is a body contacts game. So the maturity level, as you very rightly say, comes with the game time. So that game time part can easily be done, and that's where the district associations, I said, people wait for a national level league to be kind of kicking off in the district level in a Bengal or a Kerala. I come from Bengal, let me give the example of Bengal. There are hell of lots of clubs and academies who have youth teams. Youth matlab kids, 5, 6, 7, 8 year olds, have a competition among them. What it takes? Nothing. They would be coming at their own cost to the ground. All you have to give them is some snacks, and that can easily be arranged for. That's the game time which the kids need. Instead, which is right, people are looking up at the top of the pyramid and saying, "Are national level pe kuch nahi ho rahe hai." That's what has been the very bad change or the U-turn or the plummeting down in Indian football as far as Bengal football is concerned, and I believe that also goes down to other states as well.
Right. Now let's move on to the point, some concluding points. Now, coming to, you mentioned when you were talking about development of all categories, you also mentioned how at the administration level as well it needs to have. So, do you see we have that kind of good administrators now? Who defines good and how what is what's the definition is a different topic altogether. But do you see the right people at the helm of things, whether it was, let's talk about the current scenario that we are in, and yes, we have to give each of them, whether it's at the state level, whether it's at the higher top level, time for them to show us the work. But how do you see, the whole point of and you've been a journalist before, so the whole topic of having politics involved with sports. And I personally, for once, feel that in Indian sports or in India, I don't think we can keep the two separate. But at the same time, how do you see that going, further down the line now? Do you see it as a good thing, bad thing, or are we able to get it right?
See, politics is not the right word I would be wanting to use. It's support, I would rather put it the other way around. It's support coming in from the union government, whoever is at the center. Now, if that support is being able to be generated by the individuals or the general secretaries or the presidents, if they are able to garner this support, get the support of the union government, lovely. Why not? That's what the administrators are there for. And obviously, there's been a voting procedure which has been followed, being voted there in such a vast majority. So there has been a certain thought process which has gone into that. The new regime needs time. They have come up with a plan. Sadly enough, administrators are as good as the football results on the field. They are not judged by the programs which they have been doing. They are not judged by the initiatives which they have taken. They are judged by whether your under 6, under 20 team is being able to beat Bangladesh or not, under 16 team is being able to beat Nepal or not, the senior boys and the men's and the women's team being able to go to the next round or not. It kind of goes back to the same level, that it's as good an administrator is only as good as a result as far as the judgment in the eyes of journalists and fans and all over the world are concerned. I believe we need to be very patient and kind of judge for ourselves and get into the part what new initiatives have been done. And we need to accept that Indian football, where we are, you name any country, asks you, Siju, a question. Name a country where 3 matches consecutive at each and every level, under 16, under 19, under 22, and other senior boys and girls will be able to beat a country. We'll struggle to find a name. We will be struggling to find a name. So we are as good as there, and it each and everyone has the responsibility. The coaches have as much responsibility of the players have as much responsibility as the people who are in power, the people who are in power has as much responsibility as the fans, which I am part of, because we have all been kind of blabbering around the bush and not kind of getting the result. The administrators can only do a certain part, that is employ the coaches, get the best of facilities what can be given in India, give the best of time as far as the calendar is concerned, and therein comes in. It's then the next level to be taken up by the other people, which needs to be done. So a regime will be successful as far as the results that would be coming in. Otherwise, 10 years down the line, we'll say, okay, we were good enough, we won the SAF, we have not been able to win the SAF. So that's the unfortunate part in which the regime should be judged or have been judged or are being judged. Rather, I would say what initiatives they are being taking to kind of bring the district administration in tandem with the state association, in tandem with the state government, and coordinating with all of them is how they should be judged.
Right. Just a point before I conclude with the final few thoughts I have to ask you. You mentioned calendar. Do you think while you were working with the AIFF or even today, let's talk about while you were probably working, because today we now see something happening and we have to give them time. So you know, give them the benefit of doubt for having that time and to implement. But do you think ever Indian football, even while you were working or before, did we ever have a proper structured an Indian football calendar? I mean, where it probably said, okay, this is going to be from here to here, and this is the tournaments, the other matches at every category. Because what we've seen in the past is there's something promised but never done and implemented, or it's the other way around. More or less, the calendar, I mean, it's more or less incomplete. Like there's nothing happening. It's just a 4 month league, IWL, which is called a league, but then it's just a 2 week affair, now probably a month old saga. But and then at the youth levels, coming down to the youth levels, different age groups, we've also seen the whole thing of hosting bigger events, and that's when we try and get the teams across in that age category. So when you talk about calendar, what exactly do you mean, and has there ever been an Indian football thorough calendar?
Well, that's a big debatable point. Means people will agree to disagree and disagree to agree. But whatever it is, the youth leagues have been there. The women's IWL, there have been plans to make it big. The senior league is being kind of going bigger. There have been more matches for the players this time, with also the other competitions coming in. Tournaments are being revived. The Santosh Trophy has been revived, is being revived. When we speak of calendar, Siju, one thing which is the biggest roadblock is the state associations, because I'm not saying that they are to be blamed. There are age groups, especially the examinations, the weather, the festival part, all of that needs to be taken into account. You need to be can't having matches from around June, July to September, October in India because of the monsoon season. You just can't. So even if you have a kind of any level league where under the rain, and name me a place where it does not rain in India. It rains almost all over the country. If you play there, it's slushy grounds. It's not at all football matches. So all of them, those 4 months going out, it comes down to 8 months, and then there are the examination times for the players. Then the second division and the Santosh Trophy cannot coincide at one time because the same set of players are going to out to play. So balancing the calendar is a very delicate job. It's very easy to be criticizing it. Maybe people have a point. I'm not saying that people don't have a point. But doing it means to each and everyone, keeping each and everyone happy won't ever happen. I would rather say, means entirely my personal opinion, there were a lot many tournaments in the past all over the country which used to be organized by the state associations. There has been no pavandi on them not to be organized. Clubs can go in and play. Public sector unit teams they can go out and play. That adds to the popularity, and that can obviously be adding to the calendar. You mentioned about big tournaments coming in the country. It was done with a vision. People, there are again two sides of the coin. It was kind of done to galvanize the entire masses. The FIFA Under 17 Boys World Cup was a huge success in the country, organization wise. And the same batch went on and played. Unfortunate that not performed that well as much they were supposed to do at the under 22 level. But the efforts and the planning from the organization side, we can't doubt it. Now, in a country like India, can we do it each and every time? We can't, and maybe that's the right reason that they have been kind of discontinued, that we are not kind of investing into certain so much big events anymore.
Right. I think I definitely, I mean, this episode probably can go on forever, I would say, because of the things that you are willing to share and also about the things, from the talking point itself. I'm trying to get some more to ask you, but I'm going to conclude for now and ask, probably end on a better note. If the whole episode was, I think the episode was a cracker of the one because of the conversation that we had. And I'm sure, yes, we probably might have gone a little overboard as compared to the other episodes, but I'm sure all the listeners will stay till the end of this one, glued onto it, in fact. Ending for this one, I would ask you, you've worked with the wealth of experience you've had closely, you've seen the highs and the lows. Some of, like, probably if I had to ask you to pick three best moments for, for personally for you, having closely worked with the national team and the federation, any three most cherished moments that if you can share with us and why so?
Well, there have been lot. There have been lot. God has been kind, extremely, extremely kind. It's been an experience which everyone will be very jealous of. I've been so much lucky that I've been able to represent my country in 550 plus international matches at the international level. Being there in the dugout, it's been a huge, huge experience. Joining the federation was a dream come true for me because I grew up pursuing Indian football a lot. So that was one of the biggest days for me. Tried to revamp the media department with very limited resources as much as we could. Support came in from the organization and the bosses. Has been huge. I just want to mention about one incident, what makes a team and what doesn't make a team. I believe AFC Challenge Cup 2013, we lost in Myanmar, the decider. Wim Koevermans was the coach at that time. We needed a draw. We didn't play out for a draw. Should have won the match handsomely. Anyway, we couldn't convert. That's a different story altogether. And we lost it eventually 1-0, the match. And conceding in the 70th minute, all dreams of playing in the 2015 Asian Cup in Australia smashed. We come back. And 3 or 4 years later, around 2017, the journey for the 2019 Asian Cup again begins at the same stadium in Myanmar. It's a 50-50 match was telecast. Everyone watched it. I was being abused like anything at around the 90-91st minute when I was walking towards the dugout, understanding it's a kind of a draw by the hostile fans out there. And that's when Udanta's run started and everyone followed and Sunil kind of converted. It was a mad day for us, a very, very emotional day for some individuals, part of the support staff who were there in that loss when the dreams were smashed of us not making it to Australia. Some support staff, I remember Liaquat Ali, I remember Gigi Sir, Gigi George, yours truly. And among the players, there were Subroto and Sunil. And when we lost to Myanmar, there were kind of tears in everyone's eyes that we lost. One did not cry, but the pain was unbearable. It hurt so much. And when we beat Myanmar out there, we didn't much celebrate much. But those guys who were part of that day of having lost to Myanmar in Yangon, we just kind of held our hands together and stood there for 30 seconds, tears rolling down the eyes of each and everyone. Didn't say anything to anyone. We just hugged and then walked off to the team bus. So those were moments. Those have been moments which you can't describe. Will live with me forever. Maybe a book someday, but it's been a great pleasure, Siju, to be out here. And I mean to say that it's not, means it's just generic comments, nothing specific against anyone. I'm just sharing my experiences, my thought process, and I reiterate, I may be entirely and absolutely wrong, but these are my thought processes which I have.
Well, thank you so much, Nilanjan, for taking time out and for sharing all those great insights. Yes, as we were probably talking off the record, you mentioned that, if this could definitely be tickle those thinking hats, thinking caps of our brains. Definitely, it's going to be that we have to probably look at different things, and it's going to make a lot of people think about before making a statement or a comment. But once again, I would say probably, I'll probably get you once, probably more than once on the show, because the vast wealth of knowledge that you bring in and also some great discussions going to be ahead. But finally, now this is actually going to be my final question to you. What can we expect from Nilanjan Datta? What's coming ahead? Is there anything that you can share?
God has been kind, God will be kind. I'm there, and I've been around with sports, will be involved with sports for sure, but nothing all of a sudden. Will be there. And definitely one of the biggest fans, the biggest fan of Indian football for sure.
Great. Thank you so much once again for taking your time and spending so much time with me and on the show. I'm sure this was a great listen to all those tuned in. Thank you.
Pleasure.
To all the lovely listeners, thank you once again, guys, for showering the love. And please do follow and subscribe to the Totally Indian Football Show. We are available on a lot of audio platforms, but do listen to the preferred ones that you are comfortable with. Once again, to Nilanjan and to all our lovely listeners, thank you once again. This was Totally Indian Football Show with me, your host, Siju. Thank you.